I came into the world in a very, very dramatic way. Living the first 7 years of my life as a child of war really gave me a strength out of this world, especially when I was just recently diagnosed with deadly disease. There's no cure for it. So deciding to have a child when the statistics were against me, they said 2 to 3 years to live. It's a huge milestone for me. I've lived so long already. A lot of people have not. And so if I can stay for 2 more years, that would be a good goal, but I want to stay with him forever. So. The bombs were falling down outside the shelter and we were all scared, and my mom was carrying me and she was ready to just give birth to me, and she was ready to burst basically, and my dad was now scared for her instead of the bombs that were coming down. And they told me that they were screaming, and my dad was screaming, asking people, is there anyone that can give birth to this child? They drove all the way to the hospital, and I was born basically very close to dying in that whole, moment. And already back then I got a dramatic start to my life. And that was in Beirut, Lebanon in 1977, the day I was born. Thankfully, we were able to flee Lebanon in the war. Not that many people got to do that early. Coming to Sweden was, they took us in and they interrogated us, but finally when we got on the bus to go to the refugee camp, I just saw the snow around us, and the whole journey there to the refugee camp was basically just snow. It was white all over. The feeling I got in my heart and in my soul was freedom, peace, never again having to fear death by, bombs, or fearing that my family would die. It was always in my dreams. It was always something that was there in the background in my life, is that I would dream about, having a child. I would dream about being a mother. I grew up with many siblings and many younger siblings. So early on, I became a mother, even though I was just like 10 years old. And I think that was part of putting that longing for a child in me early. I just felt so good in that space, like caring for a child was something that was natural. I met a man and fell in love, and then 4 years after we met, we got married. So I was 25 at this time, and I was doing great, had an amazing career that I was already, climbing the ladder in the tech and startup innovation industry. And we tried and it didn't work. And so 2 years later, we finally got into doing IVF and trying for fertility. But that's when I found my first lump, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was pretty tough time, and then just a few months later, my husband tells me that he didn't want to be part of that journey anymore. I've been through so much. I should just live my life and have fun, because I love my life. I love life, and I don't want a man or anything else to tell me that, I can't enjoy life. I'm not going to let that pain and that hurt stand in the way. So that was where I started my philosophy, basically, in living life no matter what. And unfortunately, just 6 months after the divorce, they found that my cancer had come back, and my breast cancer, I had a recurrence. So instead of going to the US, which was one of my biggest dreams, I got stuck in the hospital for a year to get treated for breast cancer. And during that time, I started my first company. As soon as I was done with my treatments, I went out there and worked it out and got customers and worked really hard. And during that time, I also pitched into the Swedish government a project that was basically, you showcase Swedish innovations, as well as tell the story about how come it's been an innovative country for over 100 years, So I pitched that, and eventually, after a long time, they actually said, yeah, let's go, let's do this. And I wanted to start it in Silicon Valley, San Francisco. And so that's how I eventually got to Silicon Valley and got to become a CEO in that crazy world. I met Chris. We just clicked right away. Our story started with lots of love and lots of adventure and lots of, amazing things happening. But then we got to really experience, for better or worse, life and death and all these things. We got to experience that early in our relationship, basically early in our marriage. In 2015, when we were going to do a start that process, before starting the fertility clinic, was very clear that I have to do a mammogram because they were worried that, because of my background. We're like, okay, let's do a mammogram. I know I don't have any more cancer, so, I was pretty certain about it. But it turned out that I had a new breast cancer in the other breast, which was like completely separate from my first breast cancer. So they said if I just do a mastectomy, that's all I need to do, no treatment or anything, and then we can go back to doing the fertility stuff. Then during the recovery, I had a hard time breathing, and I just felt something was wrong. So we rushed to the ER, and that's when, through a CT scan, it showed that I had actually tumors in my spine, in my pelvis, in my hips. So my previous cancer had spread in my body. So now this is when I got my, what I call death sentence, because they gave me 2 to 3 years. About 25% live more than 5 years. So it's not that many that get to, be as lucky as me to still be here. I have lost so many friends you can't even think about. Just last week, I lost a 26-year-old friend and a 34-year-old friend. So, and they, one of them hadn't even had a child or doesn't even, have a person in their life or married or stuff like that. Didn't even get to experience all that. The other one has little ones, little babies. 3 children that lost their mommy. So those are people that I get very close to and that I lose very, very often. So many people are dying from this disease, and I have made it my mission that we need to find either a cure or make this disease into a chronic disease. That is a disease that you can live with on a daily basis, live life normally, and not fear that death is going to come very soon, and lose all your dreams and hopes. My biggest grief in life was to not be able to have a child. And since I was 25 until I was 41, when I eventually had my love, my heart, my everything, Alex. Until that time, and we're talking 15 years of grieving and longing for a child that just didn't want to come, you know, until it was time. That can be compared to, that was even tougher for me than living with this cancer, to be honest. And now that I have my Alex, my love. This is the reason I wrote this book. One of the main reasons was, besides inspiring other people and to, you know, by reading my journey and seeing if they can find some ways to thrive throughout their challenges and be able to live a happy life despite of them. I wrote this book because this is my whole life story. And I want my son to read and learn about me through my own words. And I don't know how much more I have in life. It could be over next year, we don't know. It could be over the year after that. My son is still so little, he's only 3 years old. So if he doesn't even remember me, or, you know, other people telling my story, it's not gonna be the same. So for me, writing down my life in a book was a way to show him that this is Mama, and this is how much I loved you, and how much I longed for you throughout my life. And so for me, it's important that he has it, and he has it in 2 languages, and maybe in more languages, but either way, he'll always have me near through this. And that's also why, work so hard with advocacy, is to make sure that he knows that I did everything I could to stay with him, to not leave him. And so it's important to me that, you know, he knows that I didn't give up. I didn't, you know, I will go through fire to stay with him. I will go through anything. And I wanted to tell him that with my own words. And I've told people in the book to go to my Instagram in 2023, because that's my first goal, is to survive till his 5th year birthday, which is in October 26, 2023. It's a huge milestone for me. I've lived so long already. A lot of people have not. And so if I can stay for 2 more years, that would be a good goal, but I want to stay with him forever. So, yeah.